Story 1: The Changing Room. Jessica was excited for her weekend getaway to a secluded mountain resort. She'd been looking forward to it for weeks, eager to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. When she arrived at the resort, she was pleased to find that it was as charming and rustic as she had hoped. The quaint lodge had a cozy atmosphere, with its wooden beams and stone fireplace giving it a welcoming feel. After checking in, Jessica was shown to her room, which was spacious and elegantly decorated. She was thrilled to see a small spa area included with the room, a private changing room with a sauna and a hot tub. The idea of relaxing in the hot tub after a long drive was immensely appealing. After unpacking, Jessica headed to the spa area. The changing room was small but well appointed, with soft lighting and warm colours. There was a large mirror on one wall, a bench, and a rack for towels. The room was immaculate, and she couldn't wait to slip into the hot tub and unwind. Jessica changed quickly, slipping into her swimsuit and wrapping a towel around herself. She glanced at the mirror, adjusting her swimsuit. As she did, she noticed something odd. The reflection in the mirror didn't quite match her movements. For a brief moment, she saw a flicker of movement behind her, someone or something that wasn't quite right. She blinked and looked again, but there was nothing there. Shrugging it off as a trick of the light, she headed to the hot tub. The water was pleasantly warm, and she let out a sigh of contentment as she settled into the bubbles. The surrounding area was peaceful, with only the occasional chirp of a bird and the rustling of leaves. As Jessica relaxed, she started to hear faint noises, murmurs, and footsteps coming from the changing room. She figured it was just the echoes of the lodge's activity. After all, the walls were thin, and sound travelled easily. But the noises persisted, growing louder and more insistent. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone was in the room with her, though every time she glanced toward the changing room, it appeared empty. Determined to enjoy her evening, she tried to ignore the sounds. However, her unease grew as she noticed a chill in the air. The warm water of the hot tub no longer seemed as comforting. Every splash and rustle from the changing room made her tense. Finally, she decided to get out and investigate. Wrapping herself in a towel, she stepped out of the hot tub and headed back to the changing room. The air felt colder, and the light seemed dimmer. As she reached for the door, she noticed the handle was ice cold. She hesitated, her heart racing, and then pushed the door open. The changing room was empty, just as it had been before. She stepped inside, looking around for any signs of what might have caused the noises. The mirror on the wall was the only thing that seemed out of place. Jessica approached it, feeling a growing sense of dread. As she looked into the mirror, she was startled to see a shadowy figure standing behind her. It was a dark, indistinct shape with hollow eyes, barely discernible against the dim light. Jessica spun around, but there was no one there. When she looked back at the mirror, the figure was gone. Her pulse quickened as she realized the figure was still visible in the mirror. It seemed to be moving closer, its eyes fixed on her. She backed away, but the figure followed her in the reflection, getting closer and closer. Panic set in as she stumbled backwards, knocking over a towel rack. The mirror began to crack, spreading lines across the glass. Jessica turned and fled, running down the hallway to the lobby. She burst through the doors, breathless and trembling. The staff at the front desk looked at her with concern as she explained what had happened. They assured her that there was no one else staying in the lodge that evening and suggested she might have been imagining things due to fatigue. Jessica was skeptical but too frightened to argue. She spent the rest of the night in the common area, avoiding the changing room and its eerie mirror. The next morning, she returned to the changing room with one of the staff members. The mirror was intact, with no cracks or signs of disturbance. The staff member assured her that everything seemed normal, but Jessica couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She checked out of the resort early, unable to stay another night. The experience left her shaken, and she could never fully explain what she had seen. The memory of that shadowy figure in the mirror haunted her, and she avoided mirrors for a long time, fearing that what she had witnessed might appear again. Story 2: The Changing Room. It was supposed to be a simple shopping trip for Claire. She had decided to visit a new boutique that had just opened in town, known for its unique clothing and vintage finds. The store was charming, with its eclectic decor and inviting atmosphere. Claire was excited to explore and hoped to find a few special pieces to add to her wardrobe. As she browsed through the racks, she came across a stunning vintage dress that caught her eye. It was a deep red with intricate lace detailing, a perfect fit for an upcoming event she had planned. Claire couldn't wait to try it on. She headed to the changing room, which was tucked away in a quiet corner of the store. The changing room was small but well kept. It had a single mirror, a bench, and a hook for clothes. The lighting was soft, casting a warm glow over the space. Claire closed the door behind her and began to change into the dress. As she slipped the dress over her head, she noticed a strange feeling creeping over her. It was as if the air in the room had grown heavier, more oppressive. She shook it off, telling herself it was just nerves or the excitement of finding a great piece of clothing. Claire looked at herself in the mirror, admiring how the dress fit. It was beautiful, and she felt a surge of confidence. But as she continued to gaze at her reflection, she noticed something odd. The background in the mirror seemed to shift and warp, as if the space behind her was changing. She blinked and looked around the changing room, but nothing had changed. When she looked back at the mirror, the background had transformed. It was no longer the boutique's changing room, but a dark, dilapidated space with peeling wallpaper and flickering lights. The mirror's surface seemed to ripple, like disturbed water. Claire's heart raced as she saw a figure moving in the distorted reflection. It was a shadowy shape, barely discernible but unmistakably human. The figure seemed to be reaching out toward her, its hand stretching out from the mirror. Claire spun around, but there was no one behind her. She turned back to the mirror, her breath coming in short gasps. The figure was closer now, its hand almost touching the glass. Claire's fear intensified as she saw its face pale and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to follow her every movement. Desperate to escape, Claire tried to open the changing room door, but it was stuck. She pounded on it, her panic growing with each passing second. The figure in the mirror continued to advance, its hand now pressed against the glass. Claire could hear a faint, eerie whispering coming from the mirror, though she couldn't make out the words. In a frantic attempt to free herself, Claire grabbed the dress and yanked it off, hoping that removing the item would somehow break the spell. The mirror's surface began to crack, and the whispering grew louder, more insistent. The figure's face contorted into a grotesque expression of anger or anguish. Just as Claire was about to lose all hope, the door to the changing room finally gave way. She burst out into the store, her face pale and her hands shaking. The boutique staff rushed to her side, concerned by her sudden appearance. Claire tried to explain what had happened, but her words came out in a jumble. The staff checked the changing room but found nothing unusual. The mirror was intact, with no cracks or signs of disturbance. They reassured Claire that it was likely just a result of her imagination or stress. But Claire knew what she had seen. She couldn't shake the image of that shadowy figure or the feeling of terror she had experienced. The boutique, once a place of excitement and discovery, now seemed ominous and unsettling. Claire left the store quickly, vowing never to return. The memory of that changing room haunted her, and she often wondered if she had glimpsed something beyond the veil of reality, a glimpse into a world far darker than she could comprehend.